Ask Redditors. People who have gone out for a pack of cigarettes and never went back to your family. What happened after you left? Serious replies only. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel. I grew up in a very abusive, strict home. My stepfather beat both my sisters, and then when they left I was next. Anyways, one night he made me walk home from the mall because he wouldn't give me a ride. I called and asked around 5, and he said you better have your ass home at 5. I walked the 8 miles and was pretty wiped out when I was coming up the driveway. We had a big front window and I saw him sitting in his chair drinking whiskey waiting for me. When I walked in he said something and I replied, you won't do shit. The next thing I knew he had me pinned to the wall and punched me in the face until I was knocked out. When I woke up I remember feeling the blood from my nose and my mother was standing there and told me I was a disgrace to go clean my face off. I went upstairs and grabbed a hat and walked out and never went back. I was 14 years old at the time. Half answer. My dad died when I was pretty young. My mom eventually remarried to a pretty cool guy when I was young. He was honestly an amazing dad, and when my mom got sick when I was 12, he was absolutely incredible, taking care of everyone and reaffirming that I was his son. When my mom died, it was just me and him for a few years, and there were some amazing times. He made sure I was seeing a counselor and we did family things on the weekend. My friends used to joke that he wasn't even my biological dad, and he still made more time for me and did more things for me than their bio dads did. When I was 15, he got remarried. I didn't exactly like my new stepmom, but I didn't hate her. I think I just thought that the relationship wouldn't last and he'd move on to someone better. Then they got married and it was kinda weird. I did get an amazing baby brother from that. Not all bad. My dad died when I was 17. Literally taken out by an undiagnosed severe allergy. My stepmom got me from school and drove me to the hospital, and when my dad passed away, she handed me my baby brother and said she needed a minute by herself. I never saw her again. She was much younger than my dad and was an ex-foster kid with no family or best friends to support her, and I think she looked at her newborn baby and the kid her dead husband inherited and just couldn't handle it. I sure know I wasn't prepared to handle it, but my mom and my biological dad had been ex-foster care kids and mom told me a few fucked stories, so I wasn't going to let that happen to me or my brother. I do sometimes feel a little resentful that I can't have a normal life. I'm working too much and I have a 6-year-old to figure out to consider college, but I don't want my family to just be cycles of poverty and dead-end jobs. When I was 5, my dad came home from work and my mom informed him out completely of the blue that she wanted an immediate divorce. I found out many years later she'd had an affair and was pregnant. He moved out of the house. They had 3 little kids together. I was the oldest and she married her second husband twice. They weren't divorced the first time. He was paying child support as he was supposed to, but she was calling him at work and sending him letters at home. His sister kept them, asking for more, and he began to get complaints about it from his bosses. He asked his mother what he should do. She advised him to tell her he was giving her all he could and all he was ordered to, and that he was going to lose his job if she kept it up, and that if she didn't stop, he'd leave the state and she'd never hear from him again. She thought that would make her wise up and leave him alone. So he did, but she continued. So he asked his mother for advice again. Her advice was to follow through, and so he did. He packed his clothes into his car and headed for Canada. He got as far as 2 states north from where he began, like the little town he came across, and got a job there. I never forgot him. I was the only one of the 3 of us kids that had any memories of him. But when I was 16 and moved away from my extremely abusive home in every way, I called my aunt, whose name I knew, who happened to live in the town I was also then living in, and told her I wanted to meet him. Coincidentally, he happened to be visiting her. I met him, my aunt, my grandfather, and my grandmother while he was there. It turned out to be the only time I would ever meet my grandfather. He died 2 years later, but I will never ever forget it. He wrapped me up in a big strong bear hug, told me how beautiful I was, how much he loved me and how much he'd always loved me and how very happy he was to see me again after all these years. I cried then and I'm crying again now, writing it down. I can still feel the love and caring in his arms. I wasn't ready to get to know my dad at 16 though. I realize now that I just wanted to see him. It took me another 10 years before I contacted him again. But I did when I was living in California. And when I did, he took 2 weeks vacation. So did I. Drove down to see me and we spent the entire 2 weeks getting to know one another. And once he left, we were in contact daily. And I quit my job and moved up to the PNW a month later because I knew the hole in my heart would never be filled until my dad was a part of my life. And I was correct. My son has a grandpa because of my decision, and my dad is the greatest grandpa there is. I wish he'd have always been in my life, but the outcome I received is worth everything I've been through. I love you, Dad. My grandmother did. Just left her husband and 3 kids, the eldest in elementary school. My grandfather made it through. He worked at my great-grandfather's business and went on to own it. He also remarried a few years later. About 25-ish years after she left, she contacted my dad wanting to meet her grandkids, my older brother and me, and reconnect. I was around too, my brother 5-ish. My brother called her by her. This was upsetting to her and she left. 15 years pass and once again, she wants to be in her life. This time we go to her. I was excited to meet her, as my grandfather's wife hated her stepkids, and thus her step-grandkids. So my teenage self set up a false reality. One but happy family. Reality was, she had a whole different family she was happy with. A granddaughter who she loved dearly and made quilts with. She called me the wrong name the whole time we were there, even when corrected. She had a cute house with family pictures all over, none of us of course. It's like she forgot all about her other 3 kids. She's just some lady to me. I only know her first name honestly, and I know that I never want to be like her. Edit to say, because it did just end. It's been about 10 years since we last saw her. My dad, he hides it. His life growing up was not great as a result. He's angry about it, but pretends not to be. But my dad had never ever not been there for me. He's honestly sometimes too much there for me. I was a toddler too also. After 9/11 my mother moved up to Vermont with her boyfriend who, for what it is worth, is now in federal prison for first-degree murder of another girlfriend. As that indicates he wasn't a good guy. He wouldn't let me drink water unless I'd eaten a full meal, and I was too, so my mother had to serve fruit with every meal, so I'd have moisture, and let me drink water while he was at work. On days he didn't work she and I would go out and explore as much as we could. We took to cleaning up old overgrown graveyards, since it was interesting and fun and most importantly time consuming. But he was very controlling and didn't want us to leave. She didn't have a car, so we had to walk everywhere. Being from NC and with no ability to purchase a train ticket because he controlled all her finances and she didn't have a phone, she was forced to use a payphone to contact my grandparents to fly up and come rescue us and fly us back, and had to tune it with his work schedule to make sure he wasn't there when they came because she thought he might try to hurt me if he saw them come to take us. Didn't leave my wife and kids as I don't have any, but I did walk out on my mother and siblings without any notice. Dad was not in the picture. After, best decision of my life. My mother refuses treatment for her very serious mental illness or illnesses and was incredibly abusive physically as well and neglectful while I was growing up. I saw the effect it had. Burn out older siblings with no motive or drive and instead embrace the crazy just to feel sane in the toxic family home we lived in. I was homeless for about a year and a half, living out of a duffel and bumming food from friends. I feel like my life hasn't even started until I left it behind. I feel like it held me back for 17 years and I now am finally being able to find out who I am. Mom never came looking for me. I reconnected with my estranged father, whom I learned was in the military from the moment he was 18 until he was HD at 43. He has severe PTSD from his 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's now getting his master's in outdoors leadership, which I believe is a perfect way to use his massive skill set I don't see him much, if ever, but at least I know some blood is still thicker than water. I was 10 years old when my mom and dad split up. We had been expecting it, but I didn't know that my mom had packed up suitcases for herself, my sister, and I. One day we went to school like everything was normal and went to my mom's parents after school. It wasn't unusual for us to have dinner there, but then mom sat us down and told us we'd be staying there for a while. Ended up being 6 years before we got our own place. I never got to go back to my bedroom again. My dad got remarried and his wife's daughter moved in and repainted my room. When I had to visit them, I slept on the couch while she slept in my room. I didn't go out for cigarettes, but I pulled a similar stunt. My mom is abusive, and I had no spine, so I told her I was going to move in with my dad for the summer. I said I would be back before the end of August. After I moved in with my dad, I got my state ID. My mom didn't want me to have any kind of it, and I finally got my driver's permit a few weeks later. I felt bad for lying at the time, but now I'll know. If I didn't lie to her, I would have never gotten out of there. I would be stuck living on a shitty little hobby farm with a woman who did everything in her power to tear me down and hurt me. My ex-husband was extremely physically and emotionally abusive, as well as an alcoholic/addict. He obsessively controlled the money and every second of my daily routine. An unplanned 5-minute delay to get gas on the way home would result in a dressing down if I was lucky, a beating if I wasn't. We had 3 daughters, and on the few occasions I threatened to leave, he'd tell me to go ahead and leave, but I couldn't take our daughters with me. At one of our couple friends' wedding reception, he got drunk as per usual and lost his mind over something insignificant, dragged me around in the street by my hair, and pulled a gun on me in front of the wedding party. One of his friends, who was a real pose, took me aside while the groom's mom was driving my ex home and told me, "You don't have to live like this." It was like a light went on in my mind. This guy says I don't have to live like this. It took me a couple of weeks to put a plan in place, but one morning after my ex left for work, my dad helped me pack everything that would fit in a U-Haul, and I'd like to say I never saw him again after that day, but I was pretty lucky he decided to leave me alone after an initial period of stalking and about in jail for violating an order of protection. Fast forward 15 years, and I finished undergrad, law school, and postdoc. I'm remarried with 2 more amazing kids, and life is pretty much goals. Edit, I forgot to mention the kids. I did take them with me. That was why I left the way I did, since I knew he wouldn't let me leave with them otherwise. Unfortunately, it's not been all sunshine and rainbows since, although we had some pretty wonderful times over the years. My ex passed on to the girls a genetic predisposition to serious mental illness, and I lost one daughter to suicide when she was 14. We all were, and are, pretty traumatized, but we cope the best we can and try to appreciate all the other wonderful things life has brought us. Edit 2. Thanks for the gold and for the positive comments. All this isn't something I talk about much in my D2nd. It's been years, but a lot of it is still fresh, and it's occasionally cathartic to open up to strangers. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel.